Welcome to increasingly sunny Arizona. It's now reading in the hundreds. I'm so gleefully looking forward to the rest of the summer. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And the days are spent picking up oranges from the fruit tree as they rain them down. I love you all. I'm glad you came. We need a groundskeeper here to pick up the oranges. Any volunteers? Just what I expected. You know, there is so much in spirituality that assumes things that spirituality are all about, especially with Advaita, its understanding or identity. With the more meditation approaches, instead of self-inquiry, it's about samadhis and going into nirvana. With Muktananda, it was having different kinds of spiritual experiences, from a blue pearl to bliss. But there's too much emphasis made on passing experiences. It's the experiences that stay that are important, even if they don't stay like they originally came. How were you changed? How did you soften up? How did you regain an ability to love or to surrender? In other words, how are you less harmed now by life? Now, I've talked over and over again about my experiences with Robert, which are typical Advaita experiences. And I talked even more so about God realization as the result of loving a woman. But it was just an experience. Even now, I can feel God inside of me, so that's permanent. But there's also something else I can always remember and draw sustenance with. If I think back to my time with her, I awaken because of my love. Let's call her Julie. Back in 2010. And I had the God realization experience 6 or 7, 8 months after that began, because I was ready for it. I could surrender. But the important thing was I was able to surrender. And it's the surrendered state itself that is as important as the God realization experience and the subsequent experience of God constantly. It comes as a realization, not so much of the love that you have for another person, or seeing the Spirit of God in that other person, but your ability to surrender to that other person. Whether it's a guru, a lover, a cat, the idea of Jesus, the Holy Ghost, or anything else. I have never been touched by another human experience as my ability to surrender to Julie. I remember 16 hours we spent together in a foreign city, meeting her at 6 p.m. after her class in her hotel suite. Feeling such love for her when I opened the door, when she knocked, taking her by the hand and guiding her in, closing the door, and immediately falling to her knees, to her feet, holding her feet, completely surrendered to her. I was there. I mean, I felt it. I felt my presence. But it was not me that was important. It was Julie. Julie was God. She was all that I had ever wanted. I just wanted to be surrendered at her feet, to let her know how much I love her, need her, and bow to her spirit and her will. I was not for me. I was there for her, to honor her, to respect her, to love her. I remember how I felt. Totally empty, totally filled with love, with my forehead to the ground, my lips on her toes, kneeling on my knees. I felt totally empty, totally complete. I was in utter rest. The only thing I had wanted in life was there in front of me. And for the moment, I was hers, and she was mine. It's hard to describe how I felt. I felt ecstatic without feeling any energies moving through me. And on the level of being human, I felt utterly happy, like I had won a lottery, was eating a chocolate cake, and was sleeping soundly all at the same time. All that one could wish for, I had in that moment. We spent a couple more hours in bed, just lying next to each other, staring into each other's eyes, smiling, touching, holding, changing to a spoon position, and relaxing utterly. That relaxation continued that I had first felt. She was utterly mine. All that I had ever wanted in life at that moment was mine. Utter completion. She was married and I was in a permanent relationship also. And she said, Ed, we need to go out and sightsee a little so I can tell my husband what I saw in San Francisco. And we went out, driving aimlessly with a GPS system that kept telling us to make turns left or right, or go forward 2 blocks and then turn right, something like that, or naming the streets. I don't remember which. And I was just laughing hysterically, totally ignoring this woman voice from the GPS, which way to turn, because we couldn't care less which way we turned. We just wanted to be next to each other in the car, within touching distance. And this went on for 2 or 3 hours. We saw many sights because I had lived there before. And then we went back to the hotel. Spent some time in bed together without sex because she said she was married and she doesn't want to cheat. I felt the same way. I wouldn't want her to feel and look back on our time together as a point of shame. And I went to sleep. So did she, in separate beds. When we got up in the morning, we went out for breakfast at their morning breakfast kind of thing. I noticed she was looking at me every moment. Tall, thin, gorgeous, dressed in a long coat, even though it wasn't very cold. She looked radiant, and I saw her looking at me with a huge smile on her face. And I knew she felt the same way as I did. She sat down next to me with eggs and potatoes and a roll, I believe, more or less like I was having. And we talked quietly for a few minutes. And she said, Ed, this is the happiest morning of my life. We are together and we are so relaxed, so open, so surrendered and so loving, without the terrible energies we feel when we're 2,000 miles separated. The pulling, the yearning, all that's gone because we have each other now in utter happiness. I can truthfully say that was the happiest I ever was too, till that point. Utterly relaxed. My heart open, but not yearning, not throbbing, not lusting. Just accepting the moment, accepting her love, accepting my love, but both loves were very quiet. They weren't yearning, they weren't throbbing, they weren't pushing us towards each other. We just rested in each other's presence, each other's surrender, and each other's love. And this moment, I still remember. And I can look back on and feel how it was like, and feel my being relax. Feel the love come back. But even more so, the surrender. To love that deeply, that all you wanted in life was that, and it was there. Your life is complete It's like you have God realization in this lifetime, but with a human being. It was about 6 weeks later that I had my God realization experience. But really, it was not so important as the temporary experience I had with her for 16 hours, one June, a long time ago. The key I'm just pointing to is it's not even love so much as that how love drives us to surrender, wants us to surrender. And the surrender is where the relaxation of the will takes place, of the mind takes place, of the urge to do and acquire or to lose or to expand or to become deeper. All of that is gone because life is fantastic at that moment. You can't imagine it improved upon. The love you have in that moment, the surrender you have in that moment. And then we separated. She flew back to where she came from. I drove back to where I came from. But I finally knew it's not a matter of self-inquiry or feeling oneself or feeling the I am or understanding, like Nisargadatta understands about the changeability of life in the world. For me, it was that I had totally surrendered to another. I had opened up and totally surrendered to another. This talk today is aimed specifically at two people here now. I hope you can do it. Let's sit in silence for a minute. I'm going to try to feel how I felt and somehow pass that piece on to you. It's all about surrender. Collapsing to the floor like a wet noodle with no will of your own. Because will is for fulfillment, and you are fulfilled in that moment. You have to be loving so deeply that you forget about yourself and you're just into the other, worshiping the other, worshiping the spirit in the other too. But you do it on all levels, level of the body, of the spirit, of the personal, person to person. You throw it all away because you have what you want. The love and presence of your beloved who feels the same way towards you. It's kind of a mutual enlightenment. You surrender to each other. You love each other. Totally committed. Totally surrendered. with a kind of ecstasy in you that doesn't move. It's not like 1,000 suns of energy or bliss. Everything is so quiet, so peaceful, so unruffled. Consciousness is not agitated. The emotions are gone. The desire to possess is gone. Everything is gone in complete relaxation and acceptance of her being in the moment and your being in the moment. If it never happens again, you know, it's fine. Because I know what it is like now to have a complete life, complete rest, complete peace, perfection. And you carry that with you all the rest of your life, even though now you realize God within as the movement within, the Shakti within, the love within, the energies within. That's always speaking to you, is always available. The bliss, too, that comes from time to time, but also the peace of total surrender. Because now you know how to surrender. And it becomes easier and easier to surrender. Matter of fact, you only look for opportunities to surrender, to get back to that moment of perfection, of completion. And it's so deep you can't say love anymore. It's a merging, a oneness, a worshiping. And it's that feeling of worship and surrender at the human level. And on the infinite level, the level of the divine, brought together, both the God and human in one, both surrendered, peaceful, reclining in heaven, so to speak. And then when the moment is over, something separates you. You go your own way. So in a sense, it's not all about love, but your ability to throw yourself away and just cling to the other person as your God or goddess. Let it not be about you, but about her or him. Then you will find peace and happiness because you won't be struggling and striving to get more or less or different. So this is not about the other person, really. It's about how ready you are for God realization through the vehicle of surrendering to another person. It's an opportunity that's afforded to everybody many times throughout their life, but usually ends up as an ordinary human love affair. Like the movies you see, where two people thrown together, can't wait to get their clothes off. and then screw themselves to death. And then the next day have arguments. They're only in peace during a few moments of climax, and then the rest afterwards. But it's still on the mundane level of a body and an individual. It hasn't elevated to the next level of being a spiritual occurrence, where the fundamental effect of the experience is not sensual only, because the sensual part is a really small part of it. The biggest part is the peace from surrender. Like, my God, where have you been? This is what I've always wanted. To be in another and with another. To have and to hold. And then with that kind of emptiness, that kind of devotion, God begins to shine on you. Day after day, you feel happier and happier. Until one day, God shows himself to you in whatever form he shows to you, and it's different from almost everybody. After that point, you're realized. You're realized from an energetic point of view that you're not a body, you're the spirit in the body. And the spirit in the body is resting comfortably in that body, unperturbed. This is realization on the level of divinity and Godhead, and being a human at the same time. This is not an invite to awakening, where you become separate from consciousness, and consciousness is only a dream. Advaita is not higher, it's just different. However, this way of surrendering through love is so important for the world now, because the world is in chaos, division, war, hatred. And once you know that deep love of another person, that deep surrender to another person, you're different. You're changed. You're loving and accepting. And you keep yearning for ability for a few minutes to surrender with other people too. Not that you fall to the floor. Although if that happens, it's a wonder. But the ability to be quiet and in silence with another, resting in their sense of presence, respecting them, caring for them, loving them. And you become soft, receptive, instead of hard and grasping. Can we look at each other now? And just feel what we feel. Can you feel a sense of surrender? a sense of rest and peace. Can you feel a worship? And the happiness of surrender.